This is 90s and Noughties UK, a podcast on UK pop culture of the 90s and 2000s. If you want to contact the show, email 90sandnaughties@gmail.com, tweet us on @90s and Noughties UK on Twitter, or check us out on Facebook, 90s and Noughties UK.
Hello and welcome to another year of the 90s and Noughties UK podcast. Hi, it's been a while, hasn't it? But I've been busy with other things, and I just thought this year, 2023, I would jump right back onto this podcast, and I wasn't quite sure which way I was going to go with it. I think I always wait for guests and I wait for things to happen. And I think in this case, as you may get for the first 3, 4, 5 episodes perhaps, will just be me talking as I am at the moment. So hopefully that's okay with you. If it is, then let's begin. Well, the thing that I would like to talk about is something that I used to absolutely love in the 90s. In fact, I was a huge fan of this thing, and possibly one of the most iconic British duos of the 90s. I'm talking about Wallace and Gromit, created by Nick Park in the early 1980s as a student project, and with the help of Peter Sallis and the team at Aardman, turn it into a huge franchise that still endures to this day. As a kid, I was, as I say, a huge fan. I had a duvet set with Gromit in the plane, and then Wallace and Gromit at the bottom of the set. I had that. I had a Wallace and Gromit alarm clock. I had plasticine sets. I had a close shave on video. Still to this day, it's one of my favorites. And why not? It's probably one of the most technically marvelous animated films. The whole thing really kick-started my interest in animation, and at one point I thought I was going to pursue it, but unfortunately that wasn't to be, predominantly because I don't really have the patience, if I'm honest. A lot of the team at Aardman would say that 2 or 3 seconds a day, or however much it is pretty good. I would say that's not fast enough, but who am I to judge? Because the films of Wallace and Gromit, certainly those original 3, are technical marvels. Maybe not the first one. A Grand Day Out started as a student project. He paid, Nick Park paid Peter Sallis £50 to voice it. Sallis thought, I'll give this guy a break. And then 6 years later, he gets the call to say it's going to be on Channel 4. It's going to go out there, and it's basically going to kickstart your career. You know, he wouldn't have been thinking this. This is Peter Sallis from Last of the Summer Wine, which I've never really been a fan of at all. It just seemed like every episode was Peter Sallis or a character going down a hill in a bathtub. Maybe I haven't seen enough of it. Perhaps that's it. But his work in Wallace and Gromit is impeccable. It certainly kick-started my interest in cheese before I realized that lactose doesn't agree with me. Dairy doesn't always agree with me, although some of the free-from cheese is pretty good. I always wanted to try Wensleydale. I feel like I have done at some point or other. And yeah, it just kick-started a lot of things. I remember at primary school playing Wallace and Gromit, and if you're wondering what does that entail, it basically was me pretending to do what Wallace did at the beginning of A Close Shave, or even The Wrong Trousers, coming through the floor, and all these little gadgets and stuff. I'd pretend I was doing that, coming through the floor and pushing that little thing. to say what you wanted for breakfast or whatever. I loved all of that side of it. I loved the fact that Wallace was very creative. I liked the fact that Gromit had a plane for some reason. His sidecar turned into a plane. And in later years, thanks to my son, I've come to appreciate the beauty of the wrong trousers as well. And realizing that as much as I liked the second in that original trilogy, I did not really appreciate it until very recently, in realizing that it has areas of Hitchcock about it. It has a lot of the Britishness that you expect. Feathers McGraw was kind of annoying to me as a kid, but now I'm like, he's like the ultimate villain. I remember having a book of The Wrong Trousers as a kid, and the image of Wallace upside down in the museum used to intrigue me somewhat. If you've ever taken an interest in Wallace and Gromit, I'm sure all of these observations and more will appeal to you. I will talk about Curse of the Were-Rabbit and A Matter of Loaf and Death at another time, but for me, those original three shorts are what we had, and two of them won Academy Awards, which you have to think of it in this context. Two of them won Academy Awards, and they were made in Bristol. In Bristol. And they're the most British thing going. You wonder whether an American audience would understand it. And as they found out later when making Were-Rabbit, DreamWorks wanted to change all the Britishness about it, and Nick Park was basically like, well, we won 2 Academy Awards with the Britishness, so why change it? We're not going to recast the actor, we're not going to change anything about it. And then they end up winning the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature that year. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. But for me, those 3 shorts will always be something special, and I never tire of seeing them. And I love the fact that they're available on iPlayer. I adore the fact that they still get shown on CBBC at times as well. That's how I and my son got to rediscover them over the Christmas period. And so I'm not sure I've ever really talked about this on a podcast before, because it's one of my first loves, and people will know about the fact that I have been following the band Status Quo for 25 years, since I was about 7 or 8 years old. I've always sort of been a fan of those. But before that, Wallace and Gromit was the in thing for me. I had a PC game called Cracking Animator that had screensaver games. I mean, they were so basic, but you didn't care. You were like, I'm flying as Gromit in his little plane thing. Marvelous. I had, that one film on video. I should have got the other 2, shouldn't I, at some point? I still haven't bought it on DVD, actually, or even Blu-ray now. Is it too late for me to become an animator? And it probably is. I mean, look at that scene at the end of The Wrong Trousers. I mean, what is that? That is incredible, isn't it? That's an incredible piece of filmmaking, because everything is in focus. There's so much like new details every time you watch it. The fact that just when you think, oh, it's impressive that he's laying the track down, it's even more impressive that they go under the table, and there's the sense of movement constantly. It's kind of funny that there's a gun in what some might think is a children's film, but let's be honest, it's not a children's film, is it? They're not children's films. They're made for everybody. I think that is what Nick Park would think, would say about this. Those are films that can be enjoyed by people of all ages, and certainly as a kid, as a teen, and as an adult, I have enjoyed them immensely. I mean, who doesn't love Wallace's kind of eccentricity? Although, if you look at it as an adult, he's kind of an a-hole in places. And if you don't know what that means, he's a little bit like, I don't know, weird towards Gromit. Like, he says he's his friend, and it's clear that he has an affection for him, but at times he has a pretty funny way of showing it, doesn't he? Like the beginning of The Wrong Trousers. Why is it that he's very kind of appreciative of the fact that Gromit is there, but then he buys him something that's basically one is a collar and a lead, and the other is some trousers that are mechanical, techno trousers, so that he doesn't have to take him for a walk. That doesn't sound like somebody that's your friend. That sounds like somebody who's trying to spend money on not spending time with you. But all of that aside, I love his eccentricity. I love the way that Peter Sallis has delivered that role. And it's sad that when they make a new one in 2024, he won't be involved, because sadly he passed away in 2017. But Gromit will never have that problem because he's never spoken. He is basically Stan Laurel. He is the straight man. And this has always been fascinating. This is what makes it go beyond just that average British thing. All his eye rolls and stuff, the way that they animate it, they've got it down pat now, haven't they? Pat. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this little kind of ramble about Wallace and Gromit, because I've been a fan since I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I was today years old when I realized that Peter Sallis actually recorded an audiobook of the Wallace and Gromit films in the character of Wallace. And at some point I need to find this, and I need to listen intently, because I'm sure that it's great. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure there's a website somewhere I can get it, or I can pick it up on eBay or something. But if you haven't seen them, please do go and see these 3 movies. Certainly the first 3 movies. I'll talk about the others at another point. Thanks so much for listening to this first edition of 2023, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to 90s and Noughties UK, a podcast on UK pop culture of the 90s and 2000s. Please remember to rate, comment and subscribe on your favourite podcast provider. If you want to contact the show, email 90sandnoughties@gmail.com, tweet us on @90sandnoughties UK on Twitter, or check us out on Facebook, 90s and Noughties UK.